And I started doing the math and thinking, wait, I just made $65,000 in 3 months, without a college degree. You're telling me that if I work really hard and finish at the top of my class, there's a chance I might make that in an entire year after school. And that kind of set me on the entrepreneurial path.
Welcome to another episode of From Startup to Wunderbrand with Nicholas Kuhner.
Interesting chap with us today, Emil Barr, a serial entrepreneur at the ripe old age of 22 already, who's built a multi-million-dollar-a-year social media agency from his dorm room, later merging it with Candid Networks to serve global brands like Nike, Shopify, workfolks like Hulk Hogan, and somebody I admire, Vivek Ramaswamy. He's now the founder of FlashPass and workforce upskilling through tech. In this episode, we're going to talk about some of his background, how he's managing to juggle all of these balls, and what the education sector means for him. So, Emil, welcome.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me on. Excited to be here.
All right. So now you're deferring some of your education, I believe. So you have already done a bachelor's degree, and you've deferred your Stanford your class for a year or so. Have a education startup that is doing quite well, and it does three main things if I can have a look at it. There's Excel, AI in the workforce, cybersecurity, and digital marketing. I think there was another one. Yeah, AI in the workforce. So these are quite current and quite useful things. Maybe talk to me about somebody who's just in the middle of their education journey, teaching other people how to be more useful in the workforce. So let's talk about it.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, luckily, I'm not the one that teaches the courses on FlashPass. We have an excellent instructional design team and actually partnered with expert companies like Khan Academy and Intel to deliver the curriculum. So fortunately for all of our users and customers, they don't have to listen to me talk about things like AI or, Excel and analytics. My education, because I think it's an interesting topic and something that I've never been asked about before on a podcast. So if you don't mind, we take a little bit of a detour here. So what motivated me to become an entrepreneur was I got into my dream school, which was Columbia University, when I was 17 years old. And at that time, that was the first time I think the financial realities of education in America hit me. And I realized it would be almost $100,000 a year to attend when you factor in room and boarding. And my dad worked in insurance. My mother was a school teacher, but we never were wealthy by any necessary means. And there was absolutely no way that they would be able to come up with $400,000 in cash to put me through school. And so at that time, I was irrational, even more so than I am now, if you can believe that. And as a 17-year-old, I was like, there has to be a way to make this money and to be able to sort of put myself to go to this school. And so, my parents helped me out a little bit, but in addition to kind of their contribution, I still had to make up that $85,000 a year shortfall. And so I started doing all sorts of odd jobs. I started babysitting. I worked at a tennis store. I worked outside at a recreation facility. I worked in a warehouse, all while in high school. And along the way, something really interesting happened where I noticed that there was no real platform to service. And I say platform, I guess there was no real place where parents could get rid of their kids during COVID. The business was we actually gathered. We ended up at our peak having almost 100 kids coming every day to learn how to teach tennis. I hired the entire girls varsity tennis team, and I made, in that sort of 12-week period of the summer, I didn't make the $100,000 I needed to go to Columbia, but I made about $65,000 in cash when I was 17. So I couldn't have a bank account yet. When I finally turned 18, I brought it all in a big trash bag to the bank, and I had to fill out 100 forms because they're like, where did you get this money? Entrepreneurship being a lane for financial independence. And then more so when I got to college, I sort of sat in our classes and I received a speech, which was that, hey, I went to Miami University, which is a great school, but it's about 30 minutes away from where I grew up, state school, had a scholarship, very fortunate to go there. But they said, the top 10% of you that finish in the top of your class, you might be able to get a great job as a consultant at a company like Deloitte or, McKinsey or Bain and go and provide business advice to companies. And I was like, great. And they're like, the best part is you might be able to make almost $70,000 a year right out of college. And I started doing the math and thinking, wait, I just made $65,000 in 3 months, without a college degree. You're telling me that if I work really hard and finish at the top of my class, there's a chance I might make that in an entire year after school, and that kind of set me on the entrepreneurial path. So appreciate you kind of letting me have a diversion there, but I think it's funny you mentioned the deferred education piece, because when I had the opportunity to apply to schools like Stanford for my MBA, it was ultimately very personally freeing to be able to say, you know what, I can write you the full check for tuition right now, if you accept me, and not having to worry about those financial constraints. A full circle moment for me.
Well, some of the best entrepreneurs are the ones who figured out how to get people to pay $100,000 a year for basket weaving degrees and masters at Stanford and Columbia. So those are the guys, you could probably learn tricks from them. Your point about perspective, so if we have a look at that, you'll make 70K a year versus what you did in that short period of time. It is kind of like digging for gold and hitting a nugget. I mean, once you've done it once, you get that, or like a shark, blood in the water. You can sense that there's something great out there. And why just, survive on crumbs, which is quite, especially if you know that you can do it. So now I suppose a couple of years past COVID, you've tightened up your process. You've built probably a mentorship network. You've probably got some smart folks around you, like you mentioned, which is great. Let's talk a little bit about FlashPass education, because I'm in the education space and I lecture in something called a educational university here in Norway. And the whole point of education here, it's free, by the way, in Norway, so we don't have to pay ridiculous amounts of money like you. I'm at a paid university, but the point of educational education is to get people ready for action and ready for work. So maybe talk to me about FlashPass education, why you started it, why you're interested in it, and why are you putting your focus on this versus on tennis?
Absolutely. Well, the reason I started it and the reason it's a focus is because we are living in a new world, and we are undergoing one of the biggest technological and labor revolutions of our lifetime, and no one is talking about it necessarily. So there is a lot of data out there that shows that AI is poised to replace anywhere between 25 and 50% of the existing labor force within the next 5 years. So that's by 2030, within one presidential election cycle. And ultimately, the genesis for FlashPass is this idea of, especially in America, we don't have a platform or an education system that can catch up with that. And getting a 4-year degree or going out and trying to get vocational training and something like that isn't going to be a solution to AI when it's replacing jobs at what I like to say is TikTok speed, if that makes sense. So the idea for FlashPass is we want to create a platform where people can get upskilled, and when their job, not if, but when their job is replaced with AI, they can use our platform to find their next higher paying job. So they become beneficiaries of this revolution as opposed to left behind, like what we saw happen in the Industrial Revolution with China, for example, that refused to upskill. So at its base, what FlashPass is it's a platform where if you are laid off from your job or just looking for new work, you can go on our platform and you can earn credentials and become certified in digital skills, things like Microsoft Excel, things like digital marketing, but also really emerging things like cybersecurity or like AI prompt engineering. And then you can go get matched with employers looking for people that have that skill set and find your next high paying job. So you could be a manufacturing foreman, and that industry is ripe for disruption just as a result of automation, Internet of Things. And what happens is you could take your 10 years of leadership experience, couple it with an advanced Excel certification in AI prompting, and then make the transition to a job where you might be writing AI prompts for workforce automation or manufacturing automation companies and making double what you're making right now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I've had a couple of discussions about AI disrupting jobs and things like that, and there's been a lot of a bit terrified about what this is doing, especially for older generation. But I see that older folks probably are going to be able to use AI better than young folks, like your sample. You spoke about that foreman with 10 years of experience. AI is going to be able to reduce the amount of time you need to do things. It's going to improve the quality of things. It's going to do a variety of activities. And if you've got 10 years of experience, 20 years of experience, 30 years of experience, like some of these folks who might go through processes, they are going to be able to do proper prompts for AI versus a youngster coming in saying, ooh, AI, it can do everything, but I have no idea if what it's telling you. So I think these looking at as well recognition of prior learning. What prior learning that you've got or skills have you got can we train you on using AI to make those roles 10 times more effective when you go and get them. So I'm quite excited about this type of education that you've got, but focused on a hire at the moment. So what's the next step?
Yeah. So first of all, just to echo on what you said, I do think that AI will take jobs, but that's not necessarily a warning. That's a feature of progress. So did the steam engine, and so did so did the wheel when we came out with it.
Salespeople.
Exactly. So I do think that overall, AI is going to be a net positive and a benefit to humanity, but at the same time, we have to be able to leverage this new technology and adapt our workforce to be able to work hand in hand with AI as opposed to competitive to AI. If colleges aren't teaching AI, they're setting up students to fail. So we are seeing this embrace of AI. We just want to facilitate that by giving people a platform, LinkedIn for blue-collar jobs, where they can go find their next role that may be working with AI or maybe working with technology if their industry is primed for disruption. So while we sell through different colleges and state-funded institutions, as well as through different grant programs, ultimately we see our end client or end user as the state. So Ohio was our first pilot state. What we've been able to do is we've been able to prove the model. We've been able to work with 5 schools, over 70 companies, over 1,000 people to help them actually find work and build. And now what we want to do is package that up and take it into 5 to 10 other states with the goal of in the next 12 months, we're hoping to get 20% of America onboarded onto our platform, if that makes sense.
So not ambitious at all.
Never.
20%. I mean, what is 20%? 60, 70 million people?
What we're trying to do is develop as strong and competent of a product as possible so that when users come flooding in, we have the capacity to service them and match them with employers at scale.
Okay, so there's the two aspects. There's the training and then actual matching with jobs. So that makes your role slightly more complex as well in terms of what the website and the business does. Maybe let's just talk quickly about those are 2 different types of businesses, education and recruitment, basically. So how do those 2 work together? Is it working with states that have employment bureaus, or is it a new website that you're creating that has got jobs sitting on it and you're trying to create a new LinkedIn?
So it's all on our proprietary tech platform. We own the tech outright. We've built it from the ground up. We actually partnered with a team that had already built a tech platform and then essentially forked and have adapted that platform for our usage. So we know it's steady enough to support a couple million users. But essentially, we think of it as a 3-step process on our platform. It's intake. So what we have is we have an AI that will go in and ask questions about what is your past work experience, build a resume for them if they don't have one, understand what roles they would be a fit for, as well as what are they looking for. Do they want to be within driving distance of their current home if it's in person? Then the second step is the upskilling, and so we're using the data we've gathered on the intake to recommend certificates for that end individual that could be helpful to them in their career, which are offered completely free of charge within Ohio, so they can go get certified in cybersecurity or AI prompt engineering. And then the third piece is we use their intake data plus the new skills that they have then to actually target it and match them with employers looking for labor within the state. So on the user side, it's 100% free to use the platform if you're looking for a job. But then what's unique is it's also just like an unemployment bureau. It's completely free to participate in our platform. So we're like a recruiting or a staffing agency, but they don't have to pay anything. They don't have to pay to post jobs like on LinkedIn or Indeed. And our end customer is the state. And we go to the state and we can point to very concrete data on this is how much the average person on unemployment benefits, food stamps, Medicaid is costing the state and show that we can reduce that. But there's also this aspect of attracting employers into the state where now if the state is trying to attract more technology companies or new employers, they can turn around and say, hey, guess what? We have this pre-built base of 1,000 people that are certified in oil and gas, actively trying to work in oil and gas facilities when they talk to a Chevron or an Exxon or something like that about coming into their state.
Okay, so and that I'm sure no politician is going to say no to. So they're going to love that.
It's one of the few issues that actually has bipartisan support across the aisle, but helping unemployed people find jobs is one of the few things that has 80% support across both parties. So we see it as...
I want to ask one question in terms of the type of education. So there's Excel, you've got cybersecurity, prompting with AI. Once we've got 90% of people with exactly the same skills, that's basically just standardizing the process. What is next to make these people in Ohio and these particular states actually more useful? Because I've seen so many cybersecurity courses coming out. I teach digital marketing, so there'll be great ones in Norway. But isn't this a little bit generic?
We are adding courses to the platform all the time. But number two, what we do is before we create a course, we have to have a state stakeholder, but we also have an employer stakeholder. And what we define as an employer stakeholder is a major employer with at least 100 open jobs in that region. And depending on the state and the region, it could be more. To them and say, hey, what type of roles are you having a hard time filling right now? And then we'll actually work collaboratively with that employer to develop the curriculum. Oftentimes we'll film on site. We'll interview some of their experts and get back and forth on it. And there are two benefits. There's a business benefit to us because now we get to have the credibility of an Intel logo on our product, which helps us expand to other states, use that curriculum. So it's a very symbiotic relationship with the employer. We don't create courses without an employer stakeholder. And as the platform grows, that's an approach we intend to keep using because states are going to have different major employers and employment needs.
Now that makes a heck of a lot of sense, and I like that you're thinking like that. The other aspect of it is that by doing work with FlashPass education, you are going to be meeting with some of the biggest names in industry and in government. So this must be quite a fun ride for you as well, but quite frustrating, I guess, that it doesn't move as quickly as you want.
I've learned a lot about the government and who we work with. My co-founders, Will and Andy, have, across the two of them, Will was the youngest director for the Speaker of the House in Ohio. You know, they've collectively secured billions of dollars in funding. So I've learned a lot from them about how government works. We are expanding. We are creating private trainings for corporations that are willing to pay for it to have these loops. But I do think that ultimately this is a national issue. So we need to get national legislative buy-in if we're going to make a change. So it is humbling to be able, talking to some of the people that we talk to. But fundamentally, I think that most politicians do care about their constituents and their voters. And if we can point to them and say, hey, a large part of your voting bloc is set to lose their job, and we're offering you a solution on how to do that, we've actually seen a lot of receptivity across the board to that message.
Yeah. No, it's a super exciting message, and I think as long as you can keep extremely positive and tell people AI is going to get rid of the trash jobs and the trash work that you didn't want to do in the past. Now we are going to allow you to do fantastic things, and by using AI and by using this new training we've got, I think it has to be put in a very positive way so that people, and again, it's quite a daunting process, and I think if you can overcome that and give them a bit of excitement in terms of what their next 10, 20, 30 years of work is going to be like, you could have much greater success. Good. Well, Emil, where can I send folks to learn a little bit more about your education work? But then also, we didn't even touch on Candid Network, but we'll maybe do that at some other stage. But where can folks get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'd love for them to follow me on either LinkedIn or Twitter. They're always open. I've just started posting on those platforms. And in the past, I've always built in private, but I think when we're doing something like this and building a tech company in public, I want to engage with people as much as possible. So if anyone wants to learn more, I'd appreciate a follow on LinkedIn or Twitter. And then as well, always happy to connect directly there.
Fantastic. Well, I'll put those details into the description so that you can click on that. But Emil, it's been great chatting to you, and all of the best. You're doing some exciting work, and I hope you can keep your motivation up for the next 60, 70 years of entrepreneurial work that you're probably going to be doing.
Thanks a lot, Nicholas. I appreciate it.
I really do appreciate your comments. So why not go and watch this live on YouTube, or go to my website, kuhne.no. That's KUHNE.no for more information.